Ulli Beier came to Nigeria in 1950s when the country was preparing for independence. He came as one of the lecturers and intellectuals to teach Nigerians in the way of the white people. He was employed to teach phonics at the University of Ibadan.
Ulli Beier was a Jewish German. Met Susan Wenger in Paris a year before, in 1949, and then together both of them moved to Nigeria in 1950. October 1, 1950, Ulli Beier got a job at the former University College Ibadan, now University of Ibadan, as a phonetics instructor. So he and Susan Wenger moved to Nigeria on October 1, 1950. Of course, Susan Wenger was an artist in Vienna. She was an Austrian. She was an artist in that time before Ulli Beier met her. So they both, of course, arrived in Nigeria, like I said earlier, on October 1, 1950, and moved to Ibadan. And of course, both started their lives there. While Georgina was a Briton, who had also arrived in Nigeria sometime in the late 1950s, but lived in Kaduna, and then at some point came down to Osogbo, met Ulli Beier. He and Georgina married, of course, lived together until death.
Instead of sitting down at Ibadan, like other lecturers, he ventured to know more about Nigeria, especially Yoruba culture and traditions. He traveled to meet the people and learn from them. Although he came at the time when Africans were trained and indoctrinated against African culture, he chose to help Africans use their God-given potentials, especially in the area of culture, arts, and literature.
He didn't like the idea of staying in Ibadan because to him, he came to Nigeria primarily because he wanted to be among the people. He didn't want to be among the lecturers, because when he told me all this much later, that he ventured into coming to Nigeria so that he can meet with townspeople, he can meet with ordinary people, not necessarily the academics. And getting to Nigeria, he found himself living again amongst the expatriates. It's just like where he was coming from, and he didn't like it. So he willfully left otherwise glowing and beautiful campus to come to Ilobu. He first stayed in Ilobu, then he found later he stayed in Osogbo last. Many people didn't know that he was, before settling in Osogbo, that he was in Ilobu.
Discovering new things. So later I became friend of Ede, who happened to be a drummer, and later came to Osogbo to settle.
Ulli Beier was, I prefer to use the word anti-establishment. He never liked bureaucracy. He detested red tapeism. He preferred to do things his own way. Most importantly, he liked to do things unconventionally. He discovered that teaching phonetics to Nigerians, were quite odd. How could you be teaching phonetics to a people, who did not even understand the language? And then, of course, he was more attuned with the culture of the people. And of course, Nigeria was changing at the time. We were under British colonial rule. We now had quite a number of young people who had been educated abroad and even within the country, who wanted, these changes to occur. They wanted the old life, what we call the old life, the pre-colonial life in Africa, to just vanish away. And of course, we need to embrace Western culture, Western behavior, Western attitude. So Ulli Beier found this quite disturbing and felt, why do you have to throw away your culture when you can, hold on to it. Some of the things that you feel is quite odd and is not in tandem with what's happening in the society today, those ones could be discarded, while those ones that are useful, can be used and stay side by side with Western values, even Western religion, Western behavior. So you find that quite disturbing. And what he did was to move away from the phonetics department, and then through Robert Gardner, who was the head of the extramural department at the time at the University College, Ibadan, moved to that department, and he was appointed the tutor general of the Western region at the time. So which afforded Ulli Beier the opportunity to move around, collect data, interview people, learn more about the African culture, the Nigerian culture, and he began to document these, in so many ways. And he did this, like I mentioned, unconventionally. He did not stay in the classroom like many of his peers, many of his colleagues. He believed that one could learn, from outside rather than from the inside. And many of the things he would do, it was based on these beliefs that knowledge should, be shared, be spread, be taught in an unconventional way.
Because of his interest in the development and promotion of African arts and literature, he founded Mbayo Ibadan with writers, visual artists, and theater artists that later became great and renowned people in their various areas of specialization.
In a small institution where the individuals could express themselves, in literary forms, in artistic forms, discover new artists, those who he believed, would become great writers, for the future. So that was basically the idea behind Mbari Club Ibadan. And of course, it was not basically a Nigerian thing. It involved quite a number of people from Africa and, of course, from the rest of the world. For instance, Ezekiah Mfalele from South Africa, of course, he had moved to Nigeria as a result of the apartheid policies in South Africa at the time. So he was an exile here in Nigeria. Mfalele was one of the arrowheads, of the promotion of the Mbari Club in Ibadan. And involved quite a number of young writers, and at the time, for instance, we had Wole Soyinka as a member, we had Chino Achebe as a member, who else was there? Mabel Shegun at some point in time, to mention a few. So quite a number of those who became renowned artists, renowned writers in Africa, were either members of the club or had at one point or the other been associated with the club.
Ulli Beier's encounter with Oladipo created an opportunity to establish another branch of Mbayo Club at Osogbo.
Adamasingba in Ibadan was that's where we first had Mbari. And Mbari, as at that time, we were all wondering what's the meaning of Mbari. Then some people gave it different titles, but we moved from Adamasingba to another area of Ibadan. And it was still, I think that place was hired by a Lebanese merchant, but Ulli Beier was a friend to that person, so he let it out for us to be using. So I used to go there while I was with Oladipo Theatre. And from there we had the idea of having our own Mbari in Osogbo, because each time we have to leave Osogbo for Ibadan. And as at that time we have regular television program, WNBS, WNTV, WNBS. That's what it was called then. So Ulli Beier and Oladipo then decided that we should have our own Mbari in Osogbo, because Oladipo had this social bar where he was running it as his own personal drinking place, which later became Mbayo. But when we got there, we said we cannot be calling this Mbari. Mbari means nothing in Yoruba that we know. So we said, okay, why don't we make it a complete word? So somebody, not me, but maybe Duroladipo or somebody, gave it Mbayo. He added Mbayo to Mbari. So we said, Mbari, Mbayo, if I'm able to see, I'll be happy. So that's why Mbayo came into being. So there we do our rehearsals, we do our performances, we had a stage at the backyard. So that's how it grew.
Galileo said, "You cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him find it within himself." Ulli Beier and Georgina Beier organized Mbari Mbayo visual art workshop that eventually produced renowned famous artists Chief Jimoh Braimo, Chief Muraina Oyelami, late Chief Taiwo Olaniyi 277, late Bisi Fabunmi, late Jacob Afolabi, and late Rufus Ogundele, who never had academic training in arts before, to become renowned artists all over the world.
We organized workshop to train and to discover some artists. Rufus Ogundele and Jacob Afolabi were the first two people discovered. In 1964, we organized another workshop so we called all the members of theater, and from outside, almost 100 people took part. And eventually, we selected 4 of us. Myself, 277, Mano Yilami, and Bisi Fabunmi were those selected.
90% of the participants were already members of Duroladipo Theatre. 90% of the participants in the experimental workshop were already either musicians or actors in Duroladipo Theatre. The remaining 10% came from outside. And it was during this exercise that Ulli Beier and Georgina picked few of us. We didn't know why he picked us. Jacob Afolabi was the first that these South American artists met. And then he had the opportunity of participating in the first workshop where we did not perform. We didn't do anything. It was only in 1964 that the names I mentioned earlier, we were the ones that participated.
Those who were selected among the members of Duroladipo Theatre Group were people that have been discovered by Duroladipo initially.
I used to whip mat, sometimes to take to the school when we have art class, and I usually get good credit from the class. So I had wanted to go to Nika College in Jebu, but it wasn't possible before. Then it was after that I joined Duroladipo. So it was a big opportunity for me when the workshop came up, because I was so happy that I was part and parcel of the workshop, because I had intention before to do art, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how I can be part and parcel of art program. So because I couldn't have enough money to go to technical college. But eventually when this one came up, made me more happier.
He secured a job as a petrol attendant, and Esso petrol station, this one was adjacent to Mbayo. Duroladipo saw that I liked coming to see their productions. So then one day said, why don't you come and join my group? Since we are so much interested in the performance, I said yes. And that's how I left my otherwise lucrative job as a petrol attendant to come and join Dola Depot, where I got no salary. But because of dedication and passion, yes, I was very, very satisfied. And that's how I met Dola Depot.
77 was an itinerant medicine seller. He was from Ibadan, but his mom was from Ogidi in Kogi State. So he lived with his mom in Ogidi. So he was always traveling with medicine men, dancing just to sell these drugs. So his job took him to Osogbo. And there was a time when they were doing Send Forth for Michael Crowder, who was also taught at Ibadan, I think. So a Send Forth was organized for him. So while the Send Forth was going on, 277 was already in Osogbo, bumped into the Send Forth and began to dance. Well, he put on this very beautiful attire, and we began to dance. And of course, that really fascinated Ulli Beier. He thought that this guy was spectacular. So at the end of the Send Forth, Ulli Beier called 277 and asked him that where are you from? And he told him well, he was from Ibadan, and then what are you doing here in Osogbo? So he said he sells medicine, and he came with his boss, to advertise his the medicine. So Ulli Beier asked him that if he gave him some little money, would he stay in Osogbo? And of course, 277 agreed to stay in Osogbo. So that was how both of them met. So in 1964, when the workshop was to take place under the headship of Georgina Beier, 277 was also invited as part of those people who were going to participate in the workshop.
During the workshop, Georgina and Ulli Beier discovered those who have the potential to become great artists in them already. Georgina and Ulli Beier discovered those who have the potential to become great artists already in them, and use unconventional methods to let them discover the various art mediums and styles that they are known for today.
It was for 2 weeks for grooming, for checking out who can be further encouraged. So we were picked. Of course, we spent over 2 years later. The then Kabiyesi, the then Ataoja of Osogbo, Baba Adele, was very interested in what we were doing. Even though he may not know much about it, but he was a very good friend of Susan and Ulli Beier and Georgina. So he offered us the first floor, but the only floor is only, 2-story building at the palace, Ataoja's palace, was turned into a studio for us.
It was conducted by his wife, Georgina Beier. Georgina Beier was an artist, and she discovered that only those four are very close to what he loved. So that's how we were selected.
The workshop was basically for people to express themselves artistically. So all of the people that were invited for the workshop, they were given a cardboard and given tools like brush, paintings, pencils, anything at all that could, aid them. So they told them to express themselves in whatever. The same thing that happened at Lantoro in 1951 to 1952, So, and of course, these people were not artists like I said earlier. But in Yoruba land, art was unique to us. We had professional artists, who painted palaces, who painted homes, who painted shrines, So all of these people who came for this workshop would have seen some of these paintings in palaces, would have seen these paintings in shrines, in public places, to mention a few. So all they needed to do was just to replicate the same thing, on the cardboard. But beyond what they had seen in palaces, many of those who painted these things, they painted things they often seen in everyday life. It could be maybe a dog, it could be probably maybe an elephant, it could be even monkeys, it could be trees, it could be cutlasses. So anything at all that they had seen or they often see in their society, was used, as a product of what could come out in their art paintings. Well, I will not say they brought out the art in them. I think they brought out what they saw in them and made it into a work of art.
Things that Georgina and Ulli Beier love is originality. Of course, we can be inspired by other people's works, but something of yours, something from you, Gaga, has to be represented in whatever you want to do artistically. So, at first, our works look alike, but with time, because if you are copying somebody, Georgina and Ulli, they will not disturb you, but you will see that they are not interested in what you are doing. Not until you discover something that is uniquely you. And that is why if you see Muraina, among 1 million works, you can easily identify. Of course, people do copy nowadays. They copy us a lot. They did the same thing with Jima Brahma's bead works. This for me is wool painting. We call it wool painting because he used cotton, woolen cotton, to make his own art. While he also did a lot of printmaking. We were taught different types of methods, graphics. Then each and everyone pick what he is interested in. They never come to you and say, "Oh, why don't you put this line like this?" Never. But they'll come and criticize positively. And they will not put you off. Instead, you will see it from their reaction whether or not they are interested in what you're doing. We even call them song. When they like something, song. We call them song. But when something is not really interesting to them, at least the worst thing they can tell you, maybe you can still improve on this. That's all. I myself, they know me for oil painting. Not that I don't do other things, but that's what I area of specialization. Yes.
He has a gallery on top of the palace. Kabiyesi allowed him to create a gallery, art gallery, on top of where he was living. So that is how I discover myself and the kind of material he used. Each time I go to the palace, I see Kabiyesi in the morning or afternoon when I go there. And I see the crowns were made with beads. And I said, maybe I should try something like this. And later I tried it and become, not just one day, for several months, several weeks, before I can reach permanently that this is what I should do. So that's how I started.
And interestingly, for 27/7, he used broom and a style called etching for his paintings. So, and of course, he painted what he called the devil's dog, and that really impressed Georgina Mbayo and Ulli Beier.
Bisi Fabumi was into wool painting. Jacob Afolabi was into lino cut ink and color wash, while Rufus Ogundele was using emulsion paint with focus on blue, green and red as his own medium. After the exhibition, when the artists have discovered their peculiar mediums of practicing art, Ulli Beier publicized them and helped create opportunity to exhibit their various artworks, and equally link them up with art patrons that patronized their various artworks. By doing this, he empowered them financially and changed their status in the society positively.
And we never did it because of sales, but we just did it just to do the drawing and so on. But eventually he took some of them and sold it to his friend. And that's how we got to know that so we can sell art. We never trained because of sales. By the time we are practicing, and love to see some of those drawing we did, and from there we loved some of them, and some of his friends come to this, sell the painting to them. That's how we got to know that we can sell painting.
Up till today, we have the kind of mind we have. After us, so many people, if these people can do it, we can do it better. It became something like a competition. It's only after 2 years or more that we know we can sell art. So people now come and say, do you have anything? Do you have prints? Do you have painting? They took some of our works along with them. And that's the time when we didn't even realize our works could be sold. So when they came back and give us the little amount, then they said they want to use the money if we like, to buy art material for us. Yes, we said, go, because we never do.
That was the secret of the success of that program. Because the motive behind your motives was not money.
No.